Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today I had the pleasure to chat with American singer, songwriter, and cabaret artist Marissa Mulder. In this newest episode, Marissa joined me to talk about life growing up in Syracuse, New York, being introduced to music of Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday, the moment she heard and saw Judy Garland perform Somewhere Over the Rainbow, creation behind John Prine's tribute show, finding enjoyment of performing in intimate settings, her love for cabaret, and more. Now, with that being said, hope you enjoy my conversation with Marissa. Marissa, hello, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you, Jigme. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I mean, it's beautiful and such an honor to be able to chat with you and to sort of, I guess, now begin to explore some of your music that you've released over the years, and I guess also talk about your experiences that you've had on big and small stages. But I want to start with talking about I guess, how did you first get started? Was it sort of this thing from your family growing up, or was it something that just came naturally?
Sure. I grew up in upstate New York, in Syracuse, New York, and I had been singing since my parents remember me singing since I was about three or four. They kind of noticed that I had a singing voice. And then my grandparents were a huge influence on me. They lived around the corner from me while I was growing up. I could walk to their house, and my grandmother had a piano, and she directed a lot of shows down at the local church and musicals and musical reviews. And she had tons of music from the Great American Songbook and musical theater shows in the basement. So she would play through those for me. I would learn them and sing along. And I was very close with my grandfather, and he loved all the standards, jazz, Billie Holiday, Billy Eckstine, Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald. So they were just a big influence on me as a small person and exposed me to a lot of different kinds of music, but especially the older music. And then my grandmother gave me my first solo in a show she directed called Manhattan Melodies down at this little church where I went to elementary school. So that was kind of how it started. And then in my own house, my mom and dad, my dad was playing um, more contemporary music like Joni Mitchell and James Taylor, John Prine, Elton John, the Beatles. So between those two households, I had a lot of music playing in my childhood.
Absolutely. And I guess, how do I really begin this question but I'm wondering about all those, I guess, influences that you're talking about, being, I guess, young as a child and hearing these artists that sort of paved the way for musicians these days. And so
Yeah.
you kind of like referred to Frank Sinatra and Ella Fitzgerald and the iconic music and artists they've already been in this lifetime, but also inspiring other artists, like future ones that are coming up still, and people like yourself. But I guess in regards to Frank Sinatra and Ella Fitzgerald and those, I guess, in that realm of artists, what was it about their music or their style that you kind of like were like, okay, maybe this is what I want to do as a career? Was there something that stuck out from them that kind of like just gave you that urge?
Yes. A lot of it was just the clarity of their voices and the way that they used the lyrics, especially Frank Sinatra. I think he was the greatest singer to ever live. And I think it's because of the way he told stories with his phrasing, the way he used every word and the feeling he put into it. And that goes the same for Ella Fitzgerald, and another singer I loved from a very young age was Judy Garland. And that's because, yeah, they made me feel something when I listened. I could understand every lyric. When I would watch videos of them, they really told a story. It wasn't just singing, it was acting, conveying the message. And that really appealed to me from a young age.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess also like hitting on the point of, you know, in those realm of inspirations and musicians that you've looked up to over the years, I mean, I guess we also talked about in the beginning, or you referred to John Prine and Billie Holiday and those types of artists as well. But I guess now as we're talking about that, I want to talk about John Prine, and sort of the I guess the tribute show that you put on, um, I guess playing one of his, I guess, playing more of his notable songs, but also songs that people didn't really listen to more often. You know, songs like Sam Stone, which is, I guess, it is a notable song, but it isn't sung as much as people would think because a lot of the songs that are covered is Angel from Montgomery, more commonly, and stuff like that. But I guess what went into that John Prine tribute show? Because I was doing some research and it was sort of like I was interested to know because it was a COVID creation that you had made. But was it just the spur of the moment, or was it sort of something that you genuinely wanted to put out for listeners and wanted to pay tribute to one of the legendary artists of this generation?
Yes, I mean, it was a bit of both. I think for years I had been singing John Prine's song Hello in There, and I discovered it years ago because Bette Midler had covered it years back when she was doing her cabaret act and early in her career. And I loved the song so much. It just gave me goosebumps. And so I always knew that one. I, of course, knew Angel from Montgomery. To be honest, I didn't know a lot of his other songs before I put the show together. I had grown up with the songs playing in my house, but I had never really, listened very hard or appreciated them like I do now when I was quite young. I don't think I understood them. So it was a couple things. My pianist, John Weber, is a huge John Prine fan, and he kept pushing me. He had played a couple of his songs for me over the years, and he kept saying, you should do a whole evening of his stuff. And my dad kept pushing me to do that. And so after John Prine died early on in COVID, it was just so sad. And there were so many articles about him, his obituary and all these great interviews. And it was then that I decided, yeah, let's do a deep dive into his catalog and put together an evening. And so it was a show I worked on during COVID. And I was blown away by all the songs I discovered. Some of them, my pianist, John, said, you should listen to this or you got to check this out. Some of them I discovered on my own. My dad had some thoughts of songs I should look at. So that's how it started.
Yeah, and I guess one of the more, I guess, songs that I've sort of like fell in love with was I guess Egg and Daughter Night, which was called Crazy Bone, by John Prine. And I sort of was laughing along with how he was sort of performing it, but also the lyrics behind it. And sort of he was asked this question in interviews like, so that was a song that you came up when you're fishing, and it's like, yeah, my buddy and me, we went out to get that rainbow trout, and we just happened to stumble upon like this, I guess, this saying that he heard, and he's like, this is how I wrote it, and I thought that I guess like I don't remember the lyrics. I think there's a lyric of something about apple being sweet, and then he's like crazy bone, oh crazy bone. And that's just who John Prine is. It's sort of this different songwriting that you're not typically usually hear in songs. It's sort of John's humorous way of creating some songwriting genius within the song itself. It's inflection, it's storytelling to its highest peak. I mean, I'm curious to know if when you sort of perform that song or put on that show for audiences that you perform in every night, what goes through your mind? What do you feel when you sort of sing songs that mean that much to John himself and his family, but also the fans that he's also impacted?
Yeah, well, so much goes through my mind, and the songs are, like you said, the peak of storytelling. It's such strong storytelling, whether he's writing something funny or completely heartbreaking, which he does both. He did both so well. And I just think it's the commitment to the lyrics and to the story, and really, you know I try to just put them over with as much sincerity and honesty as I can. Finding my own emotional ties to each one is so important. But for example, like a song like Sam Stone, you know, it's about a veteran, that comes back from the war and is so damaged from that, and can never come back from that, and it's so devastating. But so just trying to, I don't know, put myself in the character's shoes. Same thing with Angel from Montgomery. John is writing about a middle-aged woman who is just, she's desperate and lonely, and she wants out of her life. And what an incredible opening line that he wrote. I am an old woman named after my mother. I mean, he wrote that, and he sang that. He's saying, I am an old woman. And I read an interview with him, and he said, it never crossed my mind that was weird, because he said, I write characters. And he said it was from her point of view. So that's what I sang. I am an old woman named after my mother. And I think that's what's so strong about him. The pictures he paints are so clear, that it's just sort of almost like getting out of the way, um, taking myself out of the equation to just put the story over. And it was really cool to do that with my pianist, John. And I had a friend play guitar, because we could sort of, strip down the songs, and it becomes not just singing, but also acting. I hope that answers your question. So that's sort of how I approach the show. And of course, there are humorous songs as well, because he had such a great sense of humor, not only with his songs, but things he said in interviews. That's a lot of the talking I do between the songs, are a lot of his own quotes and thoughts on life and his songs, which are fabulous.
Absolutely. And for people who haven't seen Marissa's tribute show, or the video of the tribute show from her YouTube channel that honor John Prine's music, go check it out. It's full of great music from John's catalog. I'll actually want to play one of the videos that I stumbled upon with that show specifically, that I want to share with viewers as well that are listening to this podcast. So here it is.
Make me an angel that flies from Montgomery. Make me a poster of an old rodeo. Just give me one thing that I can hold on to. To believe in this living is just a hard way to go.
Well, that was Marissa's rendition of John Prine's and Bonnie Raitt's Angel from Montgomery. I guess as we're sort of like reflecting back on that song, and what it meant to John, but also what it meant to you performing that song. When you hear that back and when you watch that performance, what do you think of?
I think of just the brilliant storytelling of the song, and sort of I think of just what a strong lyricist and songwriter he was, and the pictures he paints. And, um, you know, he really captures this woman, um, who's kind of in this very lonely partnership or marriage. And the third verse, it's kind of like, there's flies in the kitchen, I can hear them there buzzing, but I ain't done nothing since I woke up today. That kind of desperation, um and that, make me an angel, just that, give me something, because this person's kind of just drowning in their life. So that's what it makes me think of. There's so much passion to it and kind of like a plea. And it's just such an incredible song. He was such a special writer who, never was, in comparison to the others, like he never was maybe as famous as them. But I mean, all the great songwriters from Bob Dylan to Bruce Springsteen, they all kind of looked at him as the very best. That's how they spoke about him. John Mellencamp. Just so, what an interesting, humble, under the radar guy. That's what I think. And what a special person who wrote that song, as well as many of his others like Sam Stone and Hello in There, when he was just in his 20s, which is another thing that blows me away. He wrote some of these really deep songs when he was a young man, working as a mailman. Actually, before he made it as a songwriter, he was a mailman. It's just so fascinating.
Yeah, and could I also talk about the influence of Judy Garland that you had on your early career as well? Because I guess like when I'm sort of reading articles about sort of the inspirations that you found growing up, one of the things that fascinated me was Judy Garland and the story that you had there. I mean, you obviously had this love, or I guess watching Wizard of Oz was something that you kind of had that initial spark from. And you sort of said that, the first time that you saw Wizard of Oz, you were watching it with your grandpa. And you still remember that first time that you saw and heard Judy Garland sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Could you tell me about what that sort of I guess encompassed?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, even though I was so very young, I mean, I was struck by her and the way she sang the song. And not only is it a beautiful song, but it was the feeling she brought to it that, even as a little girl, it just kind of struck me, because I feel like, Judy was someone that brought all of herself to everything she's saying. And, she, there was sadness in that song. There was an underlying sadness, and depth. It wasn't just a pretty girl singing a pretty song. I guess that's what I mean. I could feel that even as a young person, that she was emoting. There was something going on, more than just the words or her voice. There was feeling underneath. And then as I got older and continued to explore her videos and stuff, I mean, she just was a master at just being so vulnerable and raw and truthful when she sang. And like Frank Sinatra once said about Judy, that every time she sang, a part of her died. And, I don't know if that's necessarily the truth when she was so young in Wizard of Oz, but even then, she had this depth. And it really stuck out to me.
Yeah, and I remember hearing something about, I don't remember when this was, but I remember hearing something about this specific thing with, I guess, emotive feelings. I remember hearing something about if you, I guess, encompass those feelings and actually show those feelings that the song portrays. So like, for instance, if a song is I guess, how do I say this? If a song is including this feelings of longing and heartbreak and stuff like that, then you have to show that feelings in your performance, because then that makes the story even more powerful, and it tells the story without having to do much, and being able to really showcase those emotions as if that was happening in real life.
That
I remember hearing that, and I was like, that is very true for a lot of songwriters and artists. But I mean, when you perform on stages, do you ever sort of include some of those things, or I don't know how to say this, but like, do you ever try to figure out how to make a song feel more stronger, but also include those feelings that the song is already feeling alone?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I think the biggest thing is just, you know, I when I know I have to sing a song, it's because it makes me feel something, or like Doris Day used to say that if a song made the hairs on her arms stand up, she knew she had to sing that song. So if a song kind of grabs me in some way, whether it makes me laugh or cry, or just I find myself Googling it when I get home, if I've heard it, like, what was that? What was that song? Then I know I have to sing it. And sometimes I don't know when I'll sing it, but I know I have to sing it. So when I bring a song to the stage, I think it's just really, I try to be as clear as I can on what the song is saying, but what it means, what the story is, but most importantly, what it means to me. Like, how do I relate to this song? What can I draw from my own life that can put this song over and make it feel real to the listener? I think that's the most important part. So I think it's really finding your own personal connection. That's been my experience to really make, to sell it, to make it come through to an audience, is why do I relate to this? What's it saying? Who am I talking to? Who am I singing to? All those things, almost like an actor would prepare. Because I really think singing and storytelling is acting. You know, it's being really clear about what you're saying, what it means to you, why you're saying it, who you're saying it to, what do you want, and kind of being in the moment. I hope that answers. That's what I try to
No,
do.
no, honestly, I totally understand what you're saying. I guess like to to further clarify what you meant there, but I think what we're trying to get by is sort of this, you have to try and do this impromptu performance. Not like, I guess like there's gonna be moments where like you're gonna have to obviously like perform in your own sort of way, but also there's this thing where like if things go wrong, then you're sort of in this moment where you're like, okay, you can't show this mistakes on the stage. The show has to go on. So what are you gonna do about it now? So that's when I guess the strategy of doing impromptu performance and doing something live on the fly. Um, and not trying to, I guess, like not trying to show people that like you don't know what you're doing, or you've made mistakes, but sort of, I guess, like, yeah, just pretending like there is nobody in the audience, but like you're still doing this thing where like, okay, this is my rendition. If I make a mistake, who cares? Move on, keep going. Um, there's better things that you can do to, I guess, to fill those errors that are happening. Do you ever experience those when you're on stage?
Yes, quite a bit. And it's been a very, because a lot of the performance spaces I sing in are smaller spaces, kind of more intimate venues, which I love. I love that. And I have performed at some larger performing arts centers, but mostly what I do is kind of smaller theaters or clubs. So, if I'm singing directly to a person, like a person in my mind, or who I think the song is about, I will kind of pick a focal spot, uh, in the back. So I'm talking to the specific person, but some songs lend themselves to, I make direct eye contact with audience members. I sort of like open it up and kind of give the lyrics, like sing a line directly to somebody in the front row, or in the table over to the right, or in the middle, which I think people really, I can tell that really goes over so strongly, and people love that connection. And that being said, yes, I've made lots of mistakes, and I've found that sometimes making mistakes is like the best thing that can happen to you as a performer, because it just kind of reminds me and the audience that, you know, we're here in real time, and this is the present moment, and things go wrong and we're kind of in this together. And depending upon the song or the mood, I've made plenty of jokes about mistakes. I find that I actually, when things go wrong, I actually am able to shine in those moments if I give myself permission. And 99% of the time, I think the audience really likes that, because I don't know if they want to see a completely polished person that makes no mistakes. You know, that's not real. That's not real. And so I try to lean into those. But if it's something dramatic and emotional and I make a mistake, I just keep going. And I don't think that matters that much, as long as you're, you know, committed to the story and the moment, and you're putting that feeling over. It's okay if you mix up a word, you know, it's okay, because you're still getting your point across, and you're still, you know, putting your whole self into it. But yeah, sometimes mistakes like that, I think they just make the bond between performer and audience even stronger, if you can handle them the right way, and just kind of, instead of getting flustered or beating yourself up, kind of leaning into it, even acknowledging it sometimes, or making a joke.
Yeah, and I want to go back to something that you just mentioned in that comment, but there was something that you said about this intimate, I guess, setting, which you sort of like love for yourself, because it's sort of that smaller venue, like a cafe or a bar or something like that, or like a club. But like, I remember hearing something about when you said about, you know, someone asked you about like, how do you describe cabaret? And sort of that was sort of what you described it as if it was an intimate setting within a smaller venue. And being able to talk to, I guess, inflect some of the songs and speak to, while you're on stage, speak in between the songs to basically someone in the audience, making them feel connected as if you were talking to a friend.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess, would you still describe that still as being cabaret today?
Yes, absolutely. That's my idea of what it is. And that's what I am so hungry for anytime I go to see a cabaret performer, a singer in a small venue or a club. Like, that's what I hope for. I hope for that connection. I hope for, you know, that direct eye contact, or just a chance to really feel like I'm getting to know the performer's authentic self. So I absolutely still believe that. And, you know, I think cabaret is different from the theater, like musical theater. And as much as I love musical theater, you know, most of the time the performers, you know, they've got these great big voices, and they're gorgeous voices, but they're kind of singing to the back wall, you know. But I feel like in cabaret, there is no back wall. It's just you and your audience. And I think it's so meaningful not to speak over them, but to them. And it can be kind of scary to do that, but it's so rewarding. And I've found that, I think people were really hungry for that. You know, the people that come, they love that. They love to feel like they're really a part of what you're doing, and that you're kind of in this together.
Yeah, and if you don't mind me asking, do you, I guess now when you reflect on all the accolades that you've received over the years, but also the experiences that you've had on stages, big and small stages, but when you reflect back on all of them, do you feel that I guess, you've cemented your reputation now as a dynamic performer?
I think so. And I look forward to continuing to grow and explore. But you know, like I mentioned, I love the Great American Songbook. I grew up on that. But as I've kind of navigated over the years, you know, my first couple of shows were kind of more traditional, which is great, more songbook, Great American Songbook, jazz, musical theater songs. But then in 2013, I did a Tom Waits show, which really kind of, with the help of my director, who was wonderful, which I think definitely kind of put me on the map as someone that wasn't afraid to take chances or kind of break into some new material. And that kind of paved the way for my doing a Lennon-McCartney show and then a John Prine show. So yeah, now I'm working on a whole show of all female songwriters, which I'll do in October. I think in some ways I have cemented myself, and it's so hard. It's such a hard business, but I feel like one by one, I kind of build a following person by person, and it's not a huge following, but it continues to grow. And sometimes I get notes from emails from people all over the world who have seen some of my videos and are touched by them. And that really means so much to me and kind of pushes me to keep going, especially when things get tough, or I might get discouraged. That keeps me going.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I was also doing some research and I came across this question that someone asked you about, what motivates you to keep being creative and still keep loving life? And you said that seeing films, plays, musical, and cabarets. You said you loved watching performers who are brave and are truth tellers, performers who make every moment clear, who really tell the story. And I guess that's been so clear in this conversation that we're having today, but that you've been very, I guess, how do I say, very clear within making yourself known as sort of the storyteller and still trying to, I guess, not sort of, I guess like you haven't sort of cemented yourself as a reputation as a dynamic performer, but I think you're still sort of figuring that out still. Yeah, and so with that being said, I mean, I was wondering, I mean, obviously because you've got a piano there, I know that for sure. I was wondering if you give us a little taste of Judy Garland, "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," or a John Prine song, if you would.
I can do that. And I'm not the best piano player. I can sight read and play, which I'm so grateful for, but I can definitely give you a little a cappella. Is that okay?
Yeah, we can do that for sure.
Okay. I will do that. So I'll do some "Somewhere Over the Rainbow."
Perfect.
Okay. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. One day I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly, birds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh, why can't I?
Wow, that was amazing. And that was Marissa Mulder's version of Judy Garland, "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." I mean, it's so surreal to be able to, I guess, think back now to seeing those, I guess, Wizard of Oz and Judy Garland sing it when you're 5 years old to now being able to sing it on stages in front of live audiences. But I mean, we're at the end of this conversation, but thank you so much for being able to chat with me. I had such a pleasure to be able to explore all this stuff with you that we've had the chance to. But thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a ball, and I love speaking with you. Thank you.
Well, to the listeners who made it this far into the episode, thanks so much for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with American singer-songwriter and cabaret artist Marissa Mulder. You can connect with Marissa on her Instagram, Facebook, and on TikTok. Visit marissamulder.com if you want to know more about her music and her story. You can also connect with me on all social media platforms and find my podcast on all podcasting platforms. I've been your host, Jigme Kelsang. Thanks for tuning into the show.
Thank you.